I took a gap year from uni. I was supposed to do environmental science. Took a gap year and I got a job at, well, it was Riverina wines back then, which became Orbit. Just a lab. I was just going to do 12 months in the lab and then I was going to figure out life after that. And I liked what I was doing, and so it just stuck from there. And because I had knocked back my degree, I had to wait till I was 21. So I worked in the lab until then, and I started my degree at 21, and yeah, just in love with it all. For me, because this was back in '96 when I first started at the winery, I was the only female there. At the time in the region, Julie was the main winemaker here. Belinda Miranda was around as well, so there weren't many. And being out at Riverina Wines, it was a very male-dominated place, but I didn't find it intimidating. I think my personality, being young and headstrong, I took the challenge on and just started growing from there. And you know, as a forklift to drive or a tractor to drive, girls wouldn't normally do that, but I would just do it. So I just, headstrong, took the challenge on and made my own way. I think the process of taking something from the ground and then making into something that everyone can enjoy, and from all different walks of life, from all different tastes and personalities. You can take something from the ground and follow that through to produce a wine that can be enjoyed in so many different occasions. It's just been my life for so long, and it's not something that went, yep, I'm here where I am now. It's just been part of my life. We need to leave this world in a better place than we found it. The wine industry is really pushing for that to happen, whether it be in a winery, in a vineyard, all the different facets of producing wine. The focus is on sustainability. The fact that it is more gender equal now is also a game changer, because it doesn't have to be a male-dominated industry, and it no longer is. So that's really good. But 2025 was probably a better vintage than we've had for the last probably 4 to 6. So the fact that we had clean fruit was a really great thing. We haven't had that for a number of years. So clean fruit made for making great wine, and it's less input that we have to put in to produce that wine, and so that's really good to see. The fruit talks for itself. You've just got to have your gut instinct, put yourself and push on forward. And working in companies, you're not the only person that's going to make the decision on it. You really need to have your gut instinct with it, because you could have 5 different voices around you trying to tell you 5 different things. So you really have to stick to what you think is, wrote it there. We vineyards to the grower services department, so we don't get out into the vineyard much. It's far too big a place and far too much going on for us to be doing that. But we will see it from grape right through ferment, stabilising and ending. We don't get stuck in the one process in our roles. We mix our roles around, so we'll do 3 months looking at vintage process, 3 months looking at blending, 4 months, and we can switch to the production side of it and preparing wines for bottling. So for us, we don't get stuck in your white, your bottling, your blending. We mix it around, which is really good, because it just keeps us all entwined with what we're all each doing, and we don't lose focus of one part. If we are fully focused on, if we were only focused on production, we would then lose, touch with the blending side of things. So it's really good how they have that. We change throughout the year. We rely so much on the weather, and you could have in your mind, this is what I'm going to do with the grapes from that vineyard, but the weather will change things very quickly for you. Is producing such large volumes, repeatability and value for money. So we over-deliver, but we can turn over our products year after year quite consistently, regardless of what's happened out in the vineyard. Tradition needs to be part of it. I think with innovation technology, things have moved forward, but you still need to hold on to the tradition of making wine. This grape, to produce that wine, it still needs to be part tradition, because things are always moving forward and technology is always moving forward, but you still need to have that hands-on traditional approach to making wine. I've got a very large water treatment plant, We now have a very large solar farm, which then feeds back into the winery. That's only come about in the last couple of years. So the recycling, we're monitoring chemicals or dry goods. It's looking at the packaging that's being delivered. So to reduce the amount of waste that we're producing. I think with climate change, it's looking at varieties that suit this region, and you see that coming through the winery. Different varieties that handle the weather here, the heat here, a lot better than other varieties in this region, and it's just grasping those and trying to push them up and showcase them to the general public. I think winemakers in the Riverina do tend to come up against a lot more challenges than other regions. So, you know, your premium regions where the fruit will shine for itself, whereas we probably have to put a lot more work into bringing the best out of that fruit. And I think that makes winemakers in the Riverina quite special. Conversations I've had with winemakers outside of this region, they, you know, deal with a lot of issues or that we have to deal with, and so it makes our job a little bit more tricky, but also more rewarding that we can do that. I would say probably Shiraz is my great variety. It's different, it's very diverse across the regions. What we have here, Barossa, Hunter Yarra, it's those varieties that you could look at it and say where the wine comes from. And one wine that I do tend to do a lot of work with in my current role, so I think that's you know, the dry seasons, you've got your wines, and your wet seasons, you've got your challenges, but I think that we here in the Riverina have learnt to adapt to that and actually produce a very consistent wine year in, year out, regardless of those seasons. You know, the wet seasons that we've had up until this year, I think we've produced great quality out of those, where people probably wouldn't think we could if they looked at the, you know, we had and what was going on in the vineyards. Doing this for a long time, and there are winemakers that come through, and I have tried to mentor along the way, both female and male. And recently we had a young winemaker spend 6 months with us, and took, you know, of that as well. So I think it's very important, because we need to encourage the younger generation to be doing this, and if I can pass anything on, I think that's very important. Winemakers need to have good connections with their growers. Obviously, I said we don't get to get out there much, but being the community that we are, I do know who our growers are, and so see them on a social and, you know, that connection. In the winemakers in the region, I think it's very important that we all stay connected, share ideas, trials and tribulations, and just sharing stories and things to go through, sharing our wines with no judgment. And I think that's really important that we have that connection. It'd be nice to try and sell more wine. That certainly would help this region, especially not Australia, but it certainly help this region. I'm not sure how we can, you know, everyone's trying to push, but selling more will then help out the right through to the winery. So I think that's really important. I think the whole winemaking process is very creative. Different that we use, putting those oaks together, balancing that, tannins with yeast cultures, yeast varieties, and so all of that's creative. And you can have 10 different Shiraz, for example, and have different oaks on them, and they all look so different. It's just being creative and putting which ones work well together, and that's every day making wine is very creative, putting all these things together. Don't let anyone push you around or say you can't do it, because just don't do it. I hope they enjoy the wine, and anyone could do this if you really put your heart and mind to it. I turned up to work every day and did my job and included everybody and tried to lead. Just enjoyed moments along the way.